Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth, as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. We have to understand, first of all, that God is order. He is divine order. The first thing that proceeds from the Lord is divine. We say divine because that term divine helps us to put an image or wrap our thinking around God. But God is actually infinite and beyond our thought. As we know, there is no ratio between the infinite and the finite. But the Lord prepared a means by which man can communicate with God. And of course, we know that means is human. And because we know that even in the epistles, it talks about the Lord being the mediator between God and men, the man, Christ Jesus. We need to keep in mind that as we approach and learn spiritual things, that there has to be the dying or the putting away of the images of the natural, because as long as you hold that natural image there, you're not going to see a spiritual image. And that spiritual image doesn't bear the substance that finite or material image has. And I know that's, as I said earlier, I know that's difficult to do. But now we must remember, I said God is order, that the Lord has a plan to bring us into that heavenly state. And I don't see any better illustration of the Lord doing that than the natural birth, which speaks and depicts of the spiritual birth. And so I don't see any better example of that. There is important for us to read, and I know I mentioned about studying, but reading is the forming of the memory. And there has to be a forming of the memory, which we call memory knowledges, from the Word. And then there is what is called knowledges that we receive by maybe conversation, listening, you learn things, you take on other knowledges. And then also there's teaching and preaching, where you have doctrinal things. So these memory knowledges, and doctrinal things is what the Lord is going to use to form a rational. Now, understand this. Without a rational, almost I should say it a better way, without the birthing, these things what's going to give birth to the rational, without a birthing of the rational, there is not going to be a means by which the things of the higher degree can flow into the natural. Now, you are in the natural, and this salvation is about the natural man. It's not about the celestial state or the spiritual state. It's about this natural state that we're in. And in the upper of this natural state, there is what is called the interior natural. Now, this is actually the external state, but it consists of what is natural. And what consists of what is natural is sensual. Then you have memory, knowledge, and doctrinal things. And from those things that are pure, as the Lord purifies them, which that need to be explained, because it's like going through a clearinghouse. You got a lot of knowledges, a lot of things that appear to be so, and they're just apparent things that have to be purified out. And the only things that remain, this is what we call the remains, is the things that can form this rational that is needed for influx from those two discrete degrees that's higher, okay? So it serves like a bridge, like a border where these things come across, okay? Now, whether you know it or not, it is important to have this rational form. You can talk heaven all you want to talk heaven, but you're only using a term called heaven without a real meaning in it, because there is no door open to allow these things to come in. So this rational have got to be formed. And I'm going to say this in a way as because we talk about the infinite and the finite having no ratio. And there's another word for this, but it's probably a word you're not familiar with, so I won't use it. I'll just use the word ratio. But there has to be this what of a ratio put back into a place so that man can have communication with heaven. This has to be this way. It's not, there is no such thing as a direct communication with the infinite God. No such thing. Okay? So I spoke directly. No, you didn't. To say that is to violate order, because angels serves as mediums. All of them do. And so if there is any communication, it is by influx, because the Lord is the only life, so that influx is by the Lord, but it's by means of these angels that have come into our thought, because we're in the natural world. And it doesn't skip heavens when it does it either. But it accommodates itself in each heaven that it descends to finally accommodate to you in the natural, so you hear it in the natural. Has to accommodate. It's just as the Lord spoke and they thought it thundered. No man understood that, but someone must have understood it because they wrote it. And then you have, even with the days of Moses, don't let God speak because we'll just die. Now, meaning that the word is so holy that it can't be comprehended by us. It can't be heard by us. Just as the word of the celestial spiritual angel can't be heard by us. So it has to descend by means of medium and find that medium door to come into this natural to accommodate us, for the end being salvation for us. Now there's a means. These things is the way it is, whether we think it is or not. Is an orderly way. It's the way it is. And if you think you're going to climb up another way, you're kidding yourself. Okay? Now I choose, and I'm thankful really, to be on the side of those that choose to go that narrow way. Okay? It's a hard way. It's not an easy way. The easy way the broad people get on. And he said many on that road, didn't he? But that narrow and hard way, he says, few there be, and he said this, that find it. Now only the seeker can find that. So if there's not a seeking about you, you're not going to find too much. There's not asking and knocking about you, you're not going to find too much. If there's not a hungering and thirsting about you, you're not going to eat and drink too much either. Correct? So you think about that. And as Brother Colin was talking about, what's going to broaden this thing is the affection. Yes, it's the affection. That infection, you would pray the Lord, give me a love for you. Give me a love for spiritual things. I just find my mind is totally drifting toward the world and earthly things, and I need an affection, change my affection. Do you know God will answer that prayer if you are sincere? If you're not, it's just a brass heaven to you. That's all it is. But if you're sincere, then the Lord will open those doors for you. Let's look at, getting started. We're going to look at John 10. Matter of fact, first we're going to look at Matthew 25. You might want to turn over there. I'm not going to read all the writings that we have, but TCR 367, I'll read that. We'll read that first. TCR 367. And I didn't look a word up that I cannot pronounce. Maybe somebody here can pronounce that hard word. TCR 367. The person, however, who separates the Lord, charity, and faith is not a form which can receive them, but rather one which destroys them. Anyone who separates the Lord from charity and faith takes away life from them. Charity and faith without life either are non-existent or abortions. The Lord is life itself. See on this 358 above. Anyone who acknowledges the Lord and separates charity from him only acknowledges him with the lips. His acknowledgement and confession are merely cold, lacking any faith, for they lack spiritual essence, since charity is the essence of faith. Anyone, however, who does charitable deeds and fails to acknowledge the Lord as being the God of heaven and earth, one with the Father, as he himself teaches, can perform only deeds of natural charity, which do not contain everlasting life. People in the church know that all good, which is essentially good, comes from God, consequently from the Lord, who is the true God and everlasting life. The same is true of charity, since good and charity are one. Now that paragraph, that covers that the one that's called spurious charity, hypocritical charity, and dead charity. I won't read that. 2, faith separated from charity is no faith, because faith is the light of a person's life, and charity is its heat. Therefore, if charity is separated from faith, the result is like separating heat from light. This causes, and most people put their emphasis on the light part. Oh, I want enlightenment, I want understanding. Yeah, you should want that, but you should want what goes along with that understanding on its equal level, okay, which is called heat or called love, and not separate the two. This causes a person's state to resemble the state of the world in winter, when everything above ground dies off. Charity and faith, if they are to be real charity and real faith, can no more be separated than the will and the understanding. If they are separated, the understanding is reduced to nothing, and the will soon follows. It is the same with charity and faith, because charity dwells in the will and faith in the understanding, or in the love and in the intellect. Separating charity from faith is like separating essence from form. The learned world is well aware that essence without form and form without essence are nothing, since essence cannot have any quality except from its form, nor is form any continuing entity except from its essence. Hence, nothing can be predicated of either if they are separated one from the other. Charity is also the essence of faith, and faith is the form of charity, precisely as was said before, that good is the essence of truth, and truth is the form of good. These two, good and truth, are in every single thing which comes into existence in essence. Since therefore charity relates to good and faith to truth, they can be illustrated by comparison with many features of the human body and with many phenomena on earth. An exact comparison is with the respiration of the lungs and the systolic motion of the heart. For charity can no more be separated from faith than the heart can from the lungs. For if the heartbeat ceases, the respiration of the lungs ceases at once. And if the respiration of the lungs ceases, total unconsciousness supervenes and inability to move any muscle, so that shortly afterward the heart also stops and all trace of life vanishes, because the heart is a muscle. This comparison is exact, because the heart corresponds to the will, and thus also to charity, and the respiration of the lungs to the understanding, and thus also to faith. For as stated above, charity dwells in the will, and faith in the understanding. This and nothing else is the meaning of heart and breath in the word. The separation of charity and faith also agrees exactly with the separation of blood and flesh. Blood separated from flesh is gore and turns into rotting blood, and flesh separated from blood becomes progressively rotten and breeds worms. Blood, too, in the spiritual sense, means the truth of wisdom and faith, and flesh means the good of love and charity. This meaning of blood was demonstrated in my Apocalypse Revealed 3:79 and of flesh 8:32. Charity and faith, for one or the other to be anything, can no more be separated than in the human body food and water, or bread and wine. For food or bread taken without water or wine merely distend the stomach and ruin its undigested lumps, turning into rotten mud. Water or wine without food or bread also distend the stomach, as well as the vessels and passages, which being thus deprived of nutriment, causes wasting in the body to the point of death. This comparison to fits, since food and bread in the spiritual sense means the good of love and of charity, and water and wine mean the truth of wisdom and faith. Charity combined with faith and faith combined in return with charity can be likened to the beauty of a girl's face coming from the mixture of red and white in it. This likeness too is exact, since love and the charity that comes from it in the spiritual world glows red with the fire of the sun there, and truth and the faith that comes from it shines white with the light of that sun. Charity separated from faith can therefore be likened to a face inflamed with spots, and faith separated from charity to the colorless face of a corpse. Faith separated from charity can also be likened to a paralysis down one side known as, hemiplegia. What is it? Hemiplegia. Hemiplegia. A paralysis down one side. Which if it thank you. Which if it advances proves fatal. It can also be likened to St. Vitus's or Guy's dance, which attacks people bitten by a tarantula. The faculty of reason becomes like this, and like the victim dances madly, believing itself then to be alive. Yet it is no more able to assemble rational thoughts together and think about spiritual truths than when someone is lying in bed in the grip of a nightmare. These remarks are enough to demonstrate the two theses of this chapter. First, that faith without charity is no faith, and charity without faith is no charity. And both are lifeless unless the Lord gives them life. And secondly, that the Lord, charity, and faith make one, just as in a person's life, will, and understanding do. And if they are separated, each of them is destroyed like a pearl collapsing into dust. Now, then this is why it says that what God joined together, let no man put asunder. Because if you separate, it's only going to produce death. And religiosity actually separates charity from faith, and it eventually causes you to die, or a people to die, or a church to die. Okay, TCR 377. Now, it's in reading concerning things of charity, it's so necessary because charity at the end of the church age is lost, and it has to be brought back because it is the primary essence of the church, and so it has to be talked about, and not just talked about, but it also has to be lived. TCR 377, number 3. Charity alone does not produce good deeds, much less does faith alone, but charity and faith together do. This is because charity without faith is not charity. Now there's faith without charity, faith, as was shown above. Therefore, charity by itself does not exist, neither does faith by itself. Hence, it cannot be said either that charity produces some good deeds by itself, nor that faith does by itself. This is similar to the case of the will and the understanding. The will does not exist by itself, so neither does it produce anything, nor does the understanding exist by itself or produce anything. Everything that is produced comes from both acting together and is the product of the understanding activated by the will. The reason why this is similar is that the will is the dwelling place of charity, and the understanding is that of faith. Faith alone is said to be much less productive because faith is truth and its function is to create truths, and these enlighten charity and its exercise. The Lord teaches about this enlightenment when he said, "He who does the truth comes to light, so that his deeds may be made apparent, since they are done in God." John 3:21. When therefore a person does good deeds in accordance with truths, he does them in light, that is to say, intelligently and